And turn my mic on. I know, Aubrey. Well, it's all right. She'll get better at reading lips. The awkwardness, yes. What is it that you think makes people fear like awkwardness, or like not fear? I mean, at its core, it is fear. But to say like, oh, that's not us. To say, oh, like this is awkward or that was awkward.
I think we always feel like the need to have like something happening or like something going on, or we're not like content to just like be with people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what makes things awkward normally.
That's really good.
I don't know.
No, that's okay. That's just a question that came to mind because I find that fascinating. Like, immediately what I think about is that people refer to like interactions as awkward if there is like a lack of vulnerability on the part of one of the individuals. Like, doesn't want to let someone in or just open themselves up. And so, quick to say, oh, that was awkward, as like a way of shutting down any sort of like seeing the other person or letting them see you. And I don't mean like see, but like actually like look at you like Jesus does in John 4 with the Samaritan woman. Like he sees her for who she truly is. We cut that off by saying, oh, this is awkward. I like that. That's a really good one. Yeah, Jackson.
Someone who is maniacal.
Someone. He's referring to faith and reason. So a maniac, someone who is hyper-rational. Sure. Lacks all emotion. Yeah. I put inauthenticity as mine. But also, like, I think about it and, like, what's the thing that I most dislike in the world? Like, at its core, I hate overcooked pasta. I mean, very, like, it's not deep, it's not substantial at all. But, like, yeah, like, inauthenticity, fake people, yes. But, like, overcooked pasta, there are very few things that upset me more than that. I can eat plain white rice. I'm good with that. As long as it's not overcooked rice. But, like, overcooked pasta becomes like pasta soup. Like, it just disintegrates, it falls apart. It's disgusting. Like, I can't do it. Bring a little levity to that. Okay, so here's what I want to do now. Since we went through this Proust questionnaire, here's what I would love for you to do. And this is kind of the reflection exercise, the reflection part of this that I think is so important, is looking through your answers. Like, I'm looking through mine, right? Looking through your answers. How do your answers make you feel about yourself? And I don't want anyone to say it, like, that's a little bit too vulnerable. We're like less than a week into this, or a little bit over a week into this class, and don't want to, pour out their hearts right now. But I think that when we really are honest about our answers and about looking through what we've said, both for like the really good ones, like what do you most like about yourself? Oh, I'm spunky and I have great personality and I love my eyes or whatever else. And then what we actually like dislike about ourselves. And then what we might say about that. Like knowing from the past, people putting like body parts, I don't like my legs, or I don't like my face, or my cheeks, or my arms, or whatever else. Or I don't like my personality. I hate that I'm so outgoing. Like, not that those are like self-deprecating things, or like I hate that I'm so judgmental of people, or whatever. I think that in looking through this list, there are two things that become really, really, really clear for all of us, myself included. I don't like that I despise the Kardashians. I really don't think about the Kardashians. I don't really care about them. Until they come up on something and I'm like, oh, gosh. And then like I stew and it becomes a vicious cycle. But I think that there are two things that come up when we look at this list that are really important for us to understand. Number one is that we, as humans, are deeply flawed. That this Proust questionnaire shows us that there's something wrong with us in how we respond to some of these questions. And I'm not trying to be judgmental in saying that, I'm just trying to be observant in saying that, because I'm looking at that based off my own list as well. There's something about me that is deeply flawed. But, or I should say also, it's not just that I want to have this cynical perspective of myself to where, oh man, I suck, I'm not worth, like, I feel my value has gone down, I'm not a good person, blah, 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 blah. Which, like, if we're being like thoughtful about Christianity, that can be a response of ourselves due to, things like the fall and tradition. We have this like ant theology, right? Like where we are totally worthless and invaluable apart from God. Okay, biblically, yes. But like this, I'm not good. I'm a sinner and that makes me terrible. We'll get into this later, but that's like It's not a terrible theology, but it can lead to complications in how you interact with other people, with God, with church, and with yourself, really, when you view yourself as being completely and only flawed. Because I think throughout this list and biblically, there's an idea that yes, we're flawed, but also we are deeply valuable. We are worthwhile. We are significant. We have this greatness within us. If you think about this, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but the deeply flawed comes from the fall, yes. But this valuable, where do you think this comes from? Even like in a post-fall, like Adam and Eve have sinned world. Where does our value come from? Not Jesus. We'll say that. Ultimately, yes. But not initially. Like, this is not a Christian idea. I'm talking about humanity as a whole. Where does this come from? Not necessarily others. What happens in Genesis? Right? Who are we made in the image of? God. And we don't believe that to be a Christian idea. We believe that to be a Christian foundation for humanity and how we should move, how we should encounter each other moving forward, that we're all made in the image of God, right? So we are flawed because of the sin, because of the fall, but also we have this great value because we're still made in the image of God, and that gives us a fundamental dignity, whether you're Christian or not. Like, this is why I hate bullying, because like bullying just removes this from people. And like hating bullying isn't a Christian idea. Like, I don't hate bullying because I'm a Christian. I hate bullying because I'm a human being, right? So this is what Pascal, who you guys hopefully have read before, or not read before, but will read this week, reading response due on Friday, don't forget about that, calls the duality of man. The duality of man. Anything that I put on the board might be important. Pascal has this quote. He says, "Man's greatness comes from knowing he is wretched." And there's more to the quote, but I'm going to stop and just leave it at that. Man's greatness comes from knowing he is wretched. So even though we acknowledge that there are two parts to all humanity, we're flawed and we're sinful, but we're valuable because we're made in the image of God. And those things are constantly in tension, right? They're constantly butting heads in our experience. Bringing knowledge, what is my experience into this, right? That even though we know these two things to be true, how, for Pascal, do we break out of this this cynicism with ourselves? This fundamental well, I'm just broken. Well, greatness comes from knowing that you're wretched. Another word for that is self-awareness. Self-awareness. Another way of saying this is that the key to understanding what our experience is comes, or it starts, at self-awareness. Knowing this dual nature, that we are flawed but we're also valuable. Yeah. Because for us, a worldview isn't one that just asserts this or just asserts this, because that's not reality. The language that I'll use for this is we don't demand an experience or an existence without this tension. I don't want everything to be comfortable. I want everything to be fine and just dandy, because usually when it is, I'm ignoring one aspect of my duality, my experience. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But what this really highlights is a picture of what Paul talks about in Romans 7, I think, which is like the key to it. That in Romans 7, that's the passage, specifically verses 17 through 25, where Paul talks about the thing that I want to do is the very thing that I don't do. And the thing that I don't want to do is the very thing that I do. I'm sorry. I always have an internal giggle when people say do. I'm a child. That is this experience. That is this tension between our wretchedness and our greatness, as Pascal calls it. So, all of this to say, any worldview must address this tension, not sweep it under the rug and just say, it's great, you're good. Or, oh, you suck, and that's terrible, and you're terrible. See the difference between those? So the you suck and you're terrible is more of that nihilistic worldview, right? There's no meaning. There's no value in anything. Everything you do is going to be terrible anyway, so yeah. Or in a postmodern or existential worldview, right? Where we just say we create everything and so therefore everything is valuable and good. We are good because we created ourselves. Do you see the difference between those two and how Christianity at the outset separates itself from every other worldview? Is that it doesn't, I'm going to repeat myself again because this is so important, is that it doesn't take just one of them and runs, but it takes both of these that are seemingly opposed to each other and says, no, this is the right thing. This is your experience. That's really profound. Tomorrow we'll talk more about why. But for now, let's get into this thing called the human experience, which is our daily interaction with the Proust questions, with this dual nature of man. And I want to do it in this way. I want to ask you this question, which is seemingly kind of strange, but I want you to think about it, okay? How have you experienced people to be happy? How have you experienced people to be unhappy? Okay? So like another way of asking this is, what do unhappy people do? And what do happy people do? So start with unhappy. This is the first one up there. What do unhappy people do? How have you experienced people to be unhappy? Yeah, Katarina.
They try and make others feel how they feel.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. So we might create this kind of juxtaposition. Happy people try to bring everyone up, right? Not just to their level or like of happiness or whatever that means, but they try to bring everyone up, encourage everybody. Even unhappy people, because they recognize or acknowledge what unhappiness is. Unhappy people don't even have a picture of what happiness is or what that looks like, and so therefore they try to bring everyone down. C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity, I think it's in book 3, talks about how the lowest depth of misery of anyone is to bring them down to their misery. Like the people who just bring everyone, like misery loves company, right? They bring everyone down and like they want everyone to be unhappy rather than they want themselves to be happy. That's really good. Yes, they bring everyone down and want everyone to be unhappy. So let's say all unhappy. What else? Yeah.
They're pessimistic.
Yeah.
So they don't see the good side of things.
Yeah. They focus on one side, right? Yeah, that's good. What else? What do unhappy people do? Yeah, Becca.
Complain.
Complain? Yeah. That's absolutely true. Unhappy people complain. That's good. What else? Yeah. Closed-minded. How is closed-mindedness a like characteristic of someone who is unhappy? They don't like looking at the happy bits? Yeah. I think that there's two sides to that coin. They don't like looking at the happy bits, but they also don't like looking at their like ugly or unhappy bits. Like self-reflection or self-awareness doesn't exist in unhappy people. That'll be important in a second. That's good. What else? Yeah.
They just kind of like wallow in it.
Okay. That's called pity, right? They pity themselves. They want others to pity them. That's part of what Katarina said of wants to make everyone unhappy. So if someone is like, oh, how's it going? And then you get like the Eeyore. Well, oh, it's always raining, right? Like, and wants everyone to not like, doesn't want anyone to actually encourage them or help them, just wants to bring people down. I'm saying that over and over again. Sorry. So, it was a joke. It was a bad joke. It's too quick. Sorry. Because you said to hate people who repeat themselves. Yeah, never mind. So, what about happiness? Or so let me say this first. Unhappiness for me, I observe in people who are controlling of like their own lives, controlling of other people. People who seek approval constantly. I think that's a characteristic of an unhappy person. And people who have no sense of adventure, I would say, as someone who is unhappy. That we can unpack later, but maybe we'll just leave it there. Happy. How do you observe or how do you experience like happy people? What do happy people do? They're giving. Yeah. What else? Yeah, Zach. They lighten the mood. Yeah. There is here, I'll use this word, levity. There's a levity within their own person and what they bring to an atmosphere. 100%. Yeah.
They don't let negative things happen to bring down.
They don't let negative things bring them down. So they have like let's just say a positivity. But the difference is like this isn't it's not insubstantial, right? It is not like cracking an egg and there being nothing underneath it. So like fake, right? It is actually like the opposite of that, to where if something bad happens to a happy person, I would say they actually address the bad thing or they address the sadness, whereas an unhappy person just accepts it. Yeah, like they just accept it, and that's it. Like acceptance, I think, is like actually working through something unhappy or something sad that happens, which happy people do, because they know what it means to be unhappy, and they don't want that. But also they don't want to sweep it under the rug, right? Like if my dad dies, I don't want to just like ignore it. Happy people don't do that. Superficially happy people or fake happy people can. Because those are the people like Chick-fil-A workers. My pleasure. Sorry, my apologies. But I'm not wrong, right? Like, my pleasure. Just glass and like nothing behind. Huh? Like that's fake. For another reason, not talking about that, but like people in real life who have that perspective of life, who they interact with other people in that way. That's depressing. What else about happy? Give me one more. Yeah.
They want like other people. They want to feel what other people are feeling, and also they want other people to feel how they feel.
Here, let's just use this word. Empathy. Happy people are empathetic. That's a good one. I would say unhappy people are apathetic. Or apathetic, which is true. Okay, I also said happy people do meaningless things. So if this makes me think of what Becca said before about like how an overrated virtue is like industriousness. We always do something for a purpose or for an output. Happy people can like just take a walk and swing a stick at the grass and hit the grass and not have to worry about it being for a purpose. Hey, it's Chesterton. He uses that example when he talks about like the not maniacal person, right? The person who could just take a walk and like look at the stars and look at the sun or look at the trees and not have to worry about getting done with the walk, not have to worry about doing the next thing, but can just exist. That is really significant and also in short supply in our current like cultural climate and contextual moment, whatever you want to call it. So, here's the thing. All of these things, this fundamental, like this unhappiness or this happiness that we're talking about, is just another way of describing this idea, the human experience. The human experience is defined as, super easy definition, our daily experiences. It is the happiness that we feel, but it's also the sorrow and the anger and the frustration and the annoyance and so on and so forth. Anything that you feel, anything that you encounter in your day-to-day life, that is the human experience. Christian Wyman has this quote from his book, My Bright Abyss, and I want to read it for you and then kind of use it to connect to a point. He says, "There is a distinction to be made between the anxiety of daily existence, which we talk about endlessly, the work that we have to do, the job that we have, financial problems, relationship problems, blah, 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 blah. And the anxiety of existence, which we rarely mention at all. The anxiety of existence, right, is like these big questions of who am I? Why do I exist? What am I doing? The former, anxiety of daily existence, fritters us into dithering, distracted creatures. So to worry about those daily things actually doesn't help to address our anxiety of existence because it causes us to be distracted. Think about it this way. When you're bogged down with homework, how many of you turn on Netflix? I do, I'll be honest. When you're bogged down with homework, how many of you try to just search your phone or text friends or figure out something else to do? That is what is called distraction, daily existence. The latter, this anxiety of existence, the latter attests to and, if attended to, discloses our souls. Asking those questions of why do I exist, who am I, these anxieties of our existence actually reveal to us more about ourselves and who we are. So, anxiety is a necessary byproduct of life, but there are two types. The first is the one that leads to distraction. The second is the one that helps you to understand more of your experience. The word for that we will use for this is longing. Human longing is what our human experience is. And that's not a Christian idea. That's a human idea, but it finds a home within the Christian worldview to where it gives a proper explanation of why we long and what we long for. Okay? Let me pause for a second. Does that make sense? Like with longing. Humans long. We'll talk about this more, I think, in a couple days when we talk about longing in art. Are you guys familiar with the Rolling Stones? Yeah, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, that song. It's all about human longing. They're rock stars who have everything and they still long for something. It's not enough for them. Why is that? It's because they haven't yet addressed this. Or they're using money, drugs, alcohol, women, the other Christianese things that we always talk about, that we always focus on, worldly things, instead of, to fill this gap, instead of something that actually works, instead of something that actually satisfies. So, Pascal, again, in Ponce, that you'll read this week if you haven't already, says Ecclesiastes, the book of Ecclesiastes, which we'll talk about way more in a week or so, shows that man without God is totally ignorant and inescapably unhappy. For anyone is unhappy who wills but cannot do. Anyone is unhappy who knows that they need to be better, who knows this but just can't do it. The unhappy man for Pascal is someone who doesn't acknowledge this but only sees this. Okay? Now, he wants to be happy and assured of some truth, yet he is equally incapable of knowing and of not desiring to know. That last part of equally incapable of knowing and not desiring to know is what we talk about with longing. We find that the happy person is the person who first acknowledges their unhappiness, then finds a way out of it. That is longing with a proper object, the thing that we want to long for. So here's my thesis that I want to give as an answer to that. What is it that we long for? It's over here. Human longing reveals a transcendent reality, something outside of this world, right? So the Rolling Stones were right. Nothing gives you satisfaction if you seek it in this world, in this earth. The only thing that gives you satisfaction is something outside of it. A transcendent reality centered on a personal being. This personal being, I think we can all understand who that is, but we'll leave that for a little bit. While you guys are writing that down, let me say this. Friedrich Nietzsche, a popular philosopher known for the God is dead theology, or God is dead philosophy, says, do we after all seek rest, peace, and pleasure in our inquiries and our searching? No, only the truth, even if it be the most abhorrent and ugly. He's searching for something. That sounds like someone who desires and wants to be happy, but doesn't know where to find it and doesn't know where to get it. Man is incapable of knowing completely where to get that, and man is incapable of knowing and desiring to not know. So that means that it's constantly something that tugs on us. If you watch movies from now on, you'll see this, from now on, not if you start watching movies. You will see this image or this idea in almost every single movie. Every single high school drama, superhero movie, everything. Longing is in all of it because it's such a part of our experience. Man is searching, we know that for sure. The question is for what? Let me end with this. St. Augustine has a very popular quote. I'm going to give you the first half, all right? He says, at the beginning of his book Confessions, our hearts are restless. O God, He acknowledges that longing. But the question is, for what? Our hearts are restless, O God, until what? We'll talk about that more tomorrow and then even the day after. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, perfect. All right, see you guys tomorrow.
Is that like a theta or?
Yeah, it is. It's shorthand for God.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause
No, you're good. Yes. Everyone except for Reese. Reese, you turn yours in. I want to know all those people.
if I have to keep up on the pizza now.
Absolutely.